All right, we're going to call the finance meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we're going to we're making an addition to the agenda. 7B is going to be budget discussion. There was a little confusion after Monday's meeting as to what, if anything, we were doing today. So Crystal, not knowing what to do, just kind of left it off, and we're not going to vote on it. We're just going to have a receive and file today, but we're going to cover the combined sheet and Commissioner Kraft's, because those are the ones we have, and then all the other ones have to be in by Friday, and then we'll address when we're going to discuss them. So I need a motion to adopt with the changes. Moved by Drillette, supported by Ha. Please vote. That motion passes 12-0. Approval of the minutes dated November 12, 2019. Moved by Myjack, supported by Romano. Please vote. That motion passes 12-0. Public participation. Does anyone wish to be heard? Anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Presentations. Finance Department Quarterly Report. Director Smigiel.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So before you have the quarterly report for the third quarter. As in the past, typically I haven't made a whole lot of comments about this. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to address them. I think what's important to note is what we're projecting for the end of the year. So a lot of these reports and the amounts on the quarterly report are cash basis, if you will. So as I indicated last week, I've done a kind of a forecast for the general fund for the remainder of the year, which is showing about a $650,000 surplus for the year. Now that amount can change month to month. We only have 2 months left in the year. Excuse me. We are running over budget on overtime. Not necessarily unanticipated. We still have a lot of vacancies at the Sheriff's Department. So I don't think we filled the 13 that we put in the budget for this year. The last I knew, about a month ago, we had, I think, 10 vacancies or 9 vacancies in the deputy rank. So we haven't even filled the 10 or 13 that we added. So it's hard to gauge what's going on there. It is ramping down a little bit in the last month, but I downloaded the payroll information through the end of today, which was that we ran payroll today, so we posted through the end of November, but I haven't had a chance to look at that to see where we're headed yet. So these numbers could change. There are assumptions in here, of course, about spending, plans based on October 31st numbers. You'll see a lot of savings from capital plan. We talked about that a little bit last week. I have another scheduled to talk about after the Finance Department, after the budget adjustment, that'll kind of spell that out. And there's some other expense accounts that are trending under budget, and that's a good thing, but we never know what's going to happen the last couple of months of the year. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Steve, for the report. I guess in my mind, for some reason, I thought when you say that we're looking at having $656,328 more than we had kind of projected, I thought we were going to have a larger amount. Wasn't there some conversation last week about having $5 million more than expected?
No. So what's happened is, if you look at the budget that's in the budget book, that shows a budgeted, let me back up. So that shows a loss of $5 million. So what's happening is expenses are coming in under budget, primarily in the contributions to the capital plan. So what we're looking at, as opposed to a loss for the year, a surplus of $650,000.
Okay, so that 5 million is accounted for essentially already
In the 656,000,
right.
yeah.
Okay, so from the, so what is that 656,000? That's essentially what we're going to have over what we, over the amended budget.
That will be
Projection.
the excess of, projected excess of revenues over expenses in the general fund for calendar year 2019. So it will be, if this holds true, then we'll be adding to the fund balance.
By 600.
650,000.
Right. Okay, so essentially, instead of being 5 million under, we're kind of, a little bit better than breaking even, basically.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ha.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Steve, you're going to have to go back and re-explain this 5 million again because there seems to be a tremendous amount of confusion. The thought was there was a 5 million unspent amount of money from 019, and now you're saying it's 650,000?
No,
No.
no. What was presented in the budget was a loss of $5 million. Now we're showing a surplus of 5 million. So we're not showing that we're going to spend 5 million more, we're spending 5 million less. For 2019.
Okay. So there is no 5 million to carry over from 019 to 020.
No.
Is that correct?
I'm right, as of the end of October, again, everything can change in a couple of months, but
Well,
if
it's
this
not
holds
going
true,
to change 5
650,000.
million, that's for sure.
Yeah, about 650,000.
Okay. So there is no $5 million that wasn't there, that was there, that's now not there. Is that correct?
I
was
don't know
never
about- I'm
there.
not sure how to answer that question.
Yeah. Well, neither
We
am
had-
I, because
were showing expenses-
It keeps popping up.
Again, when we put the budget together in September, we were showing what the budget was reflecting at that point in time, not knowing how much primarily in capital we were going to expend for the remainder of the year. As it turns out, it appears as if we're going to lapse maybe $3.9 million in transfers to the capital projects fund. There's some other areas that are under budget, and some are over budget. I mean, it's kind of all over the place, but those are I've kind of highlighted on the second page of the handout that Crystal gave you, kind of how we got from the surplus the deficit that we adopted at the beginning of 2019, or for 2019. We've had some revenue enhancements, which are before you today. We've talked about those a few times in terms of those 4 line items. And then there are expenses, primarily capital again, that are significantly affecting the bottom line. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if I'm here in November or December with a budget amendment for overtime. And maybe we can make this budget amendment too to reduce the transfers to the capital projects fund as well.
So the bottom line is, at the end of 019, your projection is there'll be 650-something thousand, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Chair Smith.
Man, I'm confused. So this is but I gotta go back to this because in the budget you presented as compared, and I think this is where the problem, the confusion with non-finance people come. From the budget presented to the difference between the paperwork you gave the commissioners that were at the meeting, there was a $5 million difference in general fund.
In the ending fund balance,
Right.
because I was projecting in the budget that we were going to draw down on fund balance. The
So-
numbers are now appearing as we're
So
not going to draw
compared
down.
to the budget that you presented, there's somehow or another an extra $5 million that is not in the budget numbers. It's only in the numbers that you presented on that paperwork regarding, because the budget still shows the same number that you proposed. But your number
Correct.
on that piece of paper actually showed the number from the end of 18, which was the beginning of 19. So you're saying
Right,
that
we're showing basically break even for 19, plus, 0 to 1 million. I mean,
All right.
it changes almost daily.
all I can say is Crystal understands what Steve's talking about. And I think she might be able to explain, I don't mean right now, but I mean to understand
Right.
this offline, because I don't understand it. But,
How about right now?
yeah, if you,
Well, can I make a stab? Because it seems relatively simple to me. A year ago, we thought we were going to be over 8 million in the red.
Correct.
We have a budget amendment today on revenues that's 3,648,000. There's also 5 million in expenditures for a variety of reasons that aren't taking place. The first amendment took it from 8 million down to 5 million in the red because that's this budget amendment. He's saying we're going to spend less, so that takes it down to, it takes it to 656. It's really easy. We thought we were going to spend 8 million more than we're actually going to spend.
Some because of revenue enhancements, some because we're not spending as much on the expense side. I can tell you, I waited until the October numbers because between information technology and facilities, I think they brought 1.5 million-ish of projects forward to you in October. So these numbers would have looked a lot better at the end of September. But I believe the last time I talked to Jaco and Lynn, they were done bringing items forward to you.
But Chair, you do still have the floor, even though I did that.
oh, really? Someone would have yelled at me had I done this
Hey,
to them, but so that's okay. It's
I was
easy. It's
just
easy.
nice
We got
about
it.
it.
All right. I am actually good on this. And again, as long as Crystal shakes her head yes, that means that everything that we're getting, she gets, and everything
Right.
that you're explaining, she understands, which is really my biggest concern at this moment.
Waiting for her to share that.
Okay,
She
thank
shook her
you. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Chair. I think you did a good job, Chair Kleinfeld, in characterizing it. But what that does mean, though, is at the beginning of 19, we essentially adopted a negative budget.
We did.
We adopted a budget which we anticipated going 8 million more, spending 8 million more than we
Bringing
thought we
in.
were taking.
Exactly.
Then we amended that budget.
By 3.5.
Yep, to say we're gonna really only spend 5 million more than we're taking
No.
in. And now you're saying the good news is we didn't spend more than we were taking in.
Correct.
So I think
There's some
that
offsetting, some of the capital projects more or less were pushed off to next
Well,
year.
we're pushing off,
You gotta
but
spend it next, you know,
for 19
eventually, but for 19, it's good news, in my opinion.
Okay, yes, well, it's good news. I hope that we don't, take a gamble every year that we're going to spend more than we're taking in every year and hope it's always good news, but it's good news this time, that's for sure. So, thank you, and thanks for characterizing. I think I understand it now. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is always good news when we're spending, less than what we're bringing in. Steve, I got some questions on this sheet. You've got this sheet here, right? This one that was handed out to us. And I'm looking at some of the numbers that have, led to this. So when you look at the revenue side of things on the amended portion versus the adopted portion, everything kind of looks relative to what we thought when we adopted it, except for cost allocation. That seems to be about a $30 million difference from what we adopted.
Well,
to
remember,
what
we put several million into that line item a month or two ago.
Okay.
For all of the general fund departments.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why that's there.
That's why I wanted to know what that was. Okay. And then I want to go, everything else there looks fine. Then let's go on to the expenditure side. Transfers out, that seems to be the biggest one there, and internal services. Now, I know we're doing internal services differently now.
Again, that's.
Yeah, that's it, yep.
Right, so again, are you interested in why the adopted or the amended is different than the adopted?
Yes, that's exactly why.
So remember, as departments are bringing capital projects forward to you, this year we put $13,584,300 into capital outlay.
Gotcha.
And then as projects are brought forward to the board and approved, then we're transferring and amending the budget, reducing capital outlay, increasing transfers out.
Okay. So that's where we're getting some of those differences
Yes,
there.
exactly.
All right. And with internal services, is this going to look differently next year? I mean, is there going to be an adopted 7 million and then an amended 35? It's going to look
The adopted budget is more in that,
in-
I'm not sure of the number, but it's in the
Okay.
larger amount, 30-some million, because
Okay.
we did the amendment and brought it forward to you in September or October, September, so that the 19 amended and the 20 adopted
So we
more
could see what they look,
comparative,
more
yeah, 'cause
comparable.
it's a big
Gotcha.
number. It's a huge
It is a
number.
huge number, right,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, all right, thank you. No more questions.
All right, Commissioners, I don't have any other speakers. So we have a motion to receive and file, moved by Leonetti, supported by Romano. Please vote. Motion passes 12-0. Department recommendations, budget amendment, general fund. This is a motion to recommend to full board a budget amendment for revenues in the amount of $3,648,395. Moved by Kraft, support, anybody, support by Brown. Let me get back to. Okay, I don't see any speakers on this. Please vote. He pointed at you and you pointed at him. All right, that motion passes 12-0.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to do the, we'll open up the discussion, and I'm going to seek a motion to receive and file first. Moved by Gillette, supported by Leonetti. Give me just a second here. Okay, Commissioner Majek, you want to open up?
I guess I will. I'll start with, again, first thanking Crystal and Leon and whoever else put together the amendment introduced by Commissioner Gillette, which called for, let's see, I believe that was 2% increase for all departments except for the public safety departments, and gave us a savings of $1.7 million. I looked at those numbers, and in my opinion, I think we need to save more. And this just basically pertains to the line item of revenues over under expenditures with issuing new debt, Steve, for 2021 to 2022. And I'm not sure if Crystal passed it out to you guys. If not, if you want to, go ahead while I'm talking, I guess. So I suggested to Crystal to come up with some other numbers, which basically would be 1% increase for all departments and 2% increase for the public safety departments, which according to Crystal gave us a 6.6 million savings. And that's sort of where I'm at with that. And that, in my opinion, that would put us in a better position to deal with the projected tough years coming up in 2021 and 2022. I think it's very important to maintain very strong fiscal discipline when it comes to this, because I hope, Steve, that the numbers aren't like that going forward in 2021 and 2022. But my amendment and what I'm talking about is to protect the county during the bad times, basically. So I'll leave it at that. I guess I'll yield the floor and just have Crystal pass that information out.
Right, okay, for clarification,
Sure.
because we haven't seen that.
Sure.
And so when we gave the deadline, when the deadline changed to Friday, Crystal thought that your amendment that I didn't even know existed until today would probably be discussed in the next round because nobody has seen it yet.
Okay.
But she's going to go ahead and give it to us, and if
Sure.
people want to ask questions today,
Yeah.
that's fine with me. And Commissioner Leonetti, I wanted to let Commissioner Gillette open up with what he wanted to talk about, but if you want to speak first.
It actually relates, it was a question to Commissioner Drolet. Given now that we found out that there's not really a 5.1 million carryover from 2019, how does this affect your proposed amendment? And that's all my question was.
Okay, Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Leonetti. The big picture is it doesn't, in the big broad picture. The big broad picture, as I'm understanding it, and I'm sure that Steve can help fine tune it and so forth, is that in 2014, the county spent about $92 million in capital projects. The anticipation in 2014 would be that we would, therefore, because we're bonding for these projects, that we were taking care of a lot of big projects that we would therefore not need to do in the future. So our annual capital projects cost was going to substantially drop from the average of spending about 10 to 12 million a year to spending 3 million a year or 4 million a year. The problem is that subsequent to 2014, that didn't happen. We ended up not spending 92 million as anticipated in 2014, but spending about 140 million, and that our average capital project our average annual spending on capital projects was right around 10 million a year, not the 3 million that we'd hoped. One of the benefits of doing all that big project in 2014 was that by taking care of all at once, we'd then be able to build up the fund balance in subsequent years because we weren't going to do as much in capital projects. Because that didn't happen, we continued to do $10 million a year in capital projects. Our fund balance is not being rebuilt like it should be. Now, with this news that Steve provides, that's good news. We did not go into the fund balance by $5 million as apparently we ended up budgeting for when it was amended. And so we end up breaking even for this year. But if you project out the capital projects for the next 4 years, 4 or 5 years at $10 million a year, and frankly, what's been handed to us is 12 or 13 million in capital projects, even with the bond, instead of rebuilding our fund balance over the next few years like we had hoped, like the commissioners in 2014 had thought, we're going to be dipping into it. Now, the $5 million that Steve addressed is very good news. We're starting from a little bit better place, but it doesn't change the net direction. And unless we get a handle on that, the projections in the next 2-3 years are going to be that we are going to be dipping every year deeper and deeper into our fund balance when we thought we weren't going to be, and we'd be rebuilding it. So Commissioner Myjak's amendment, I appreciate his recognition. I especially understand Commissioner Myjak, Commissioner Brown, and a few other, Commissioner Sauger, were here both during the 2014 situation and during the Great Recession, and saw the consequences of the very difficult and painful decisions that were made both in substantially cutting back on services and raising taxes. And I think we need to take this time to prepare ourselves as best as possible. So my amendment, and Commissioner Myjak's as well, is my amendment at the 2%, which holds public safety harmless and goes with the exec rec on anything less than 2%, is not that we cut spending. It is that we take our foot off the gas a little bit. That everybody's still going to get an increase, but we have to ease up a little bit, or we are going to be in a world of hurt in the next 2-3 years as these projections for our capital plan moves forward. Commissioner Myjak's amendment, as I understand it, is simply to say, Commissioner Droll, that amendment is better, but it's not good enough to get us where we should be in his mind, and in the next 2-3 years. So his is a little bit more aggressive as far as restricting increases. The one I have is, we can argue whether it's aggressive or enough, but it would put us $1.8 million, $1.75 million better, so that going to, without cutting anybody, nobody would be cut. It just eases the foot off the gas pedal a little bit. Says, let's just not quite go as fast, and I'm not going to say it doesn't result in challenges to departments, because salaries are going up because of contracts and other factors, 2%, plus healthcare costs are going up. So I'm not going to say that it won't present the executive and the departments with challenges that they would have to deal with, whether that's not filling vacancies or cutting some spending that we would think would be beneficial. I'm just saying that we have to force some of those decisions now because we can't put them off forever. We need to start addressing those tough decisions now, and it's better to ease into them than put them off and create a snowball effect in the next 2-3 years. So that characterizes, I think, where I'm coming from with my amendment. And Commissioner Myjak, my amendment is not my preferred budget as an individual commissioner. I would be cutting things much more dramatically. Let's start with the MSU. No, we won't go there. But I'd be cutting things more dramatically. I try to create an amendment that I think is palatable and puts us moving in a better direction. Would I vote for Commissioner Majek's amendment? Yes, I would. And do I think we should go that direction? Sure, I think we should. But I think we have a couple options now with his amendment. One that is a little bit more aggressive in trying to position us for the future, and Commissioner Majek's amendment. Mine, which may not be as aggressive, but I still think eases the gas up a little bit. So with that, I relinquish the floor.
Thank you. He's reluctant to do so because we had a long talk and he knows my position. And he knows I'm speaking next. Okay, so basically the two budget amendments are almost identical, except for one takes it down to a 1% increase instead of a 2% increase. When I talked to Commissioner Gillette today, I said, what we're doing without knowing the ramifications of it. So we know that there have been negotiated contracts. So we know, when he said there wouldn't be a person cut, you mean there wouldn't be a budget cut? Right. That's what I think you meant to say. So if we only increase the budget, the spending by 2% from last year, and the combination of the contracts plus the wage reopener is, say, 5% countywide, and I don't remember what the actual number was, now we have to start we have to start eliminating positions that aren't filled, and we may have to start laying people off, and when I say we, I mean administration. And so I don't like to do something that I don't know what the downfall. Now, I can tell you right out of the gate, in my opinion, Commissioner Majek's, it sounds easy. Let's just agree to only grow the spending by 1%. But if the vast majority of the money is salaries, and all those salaries went up 2 or 3% or whatever they went, the strain on their ability to run the county is very significant. If we say it doesn't matter that they gave out 3% raises, we're only going to allow that 1% more can be spent. We have absolutely no idea the ramifications of that. And so my position, which is, I've had different positions in different years. Some years I've gone after little things in spending. Some years I've said, let's just do, my position this time is, when we set our goals that we did with Commissioner Haas' Budget Committee, we did not know at that time that they were implementing this year, they were going to implement the compensation study on top of negotiating contracts. So what I'd rather leave it as it is, maybe do the bonding out, and give them a year to say, okay, now that we've tried to make these positions competitive, now we need to start making some cuts, and let them look at the budget and hopefully through attrition, as opposed to if we just do it right now and then all of a sudden they're issuing pink slips at the beginning of the year. And then we have people in here screaming at us and we're like, oh, it just seems so simple, I didn't think of that. Well, I'm thinking of it right now because that's happened to us before on several occasions. We go into budget, we do something, and then we have 100 people yelling at us and we go, oh, well, we didn't think about that. So that's my position. They know it's coming. I'd like to give them a chance to do it through attrition instead of us just waving a wand and announcing this is the expenditures. And with that, Chair Smith.
Boy, you've added a lot to my comments. One of the reasons we don't know the ramifications is because for the last 8 years, we've asked to be a part of the budgeting process and we've been denied for 8 years. So, of course, we don't know the exact ramifications because all we get really is what we get in our budget. What I'd like to say, let's just take, I'm going to take Leon's proposal. The raises in the union are no more than 2%. Every department has extra money in it that is not dedicated to salary. What we're saying is find something else that is not necessary, pay the salaries, freeze the positions that you can't afford to hire. And kind of, I would say like Commissioner Leonetti pointed out, and like, even like Commissioner Haas said they used to do at GM at times, is here's the money. It's a 2% increase, which is a little bit greater than the rate of inflation. Figure it out and do it, right? And let's just say worst case scenario. There's enough money with the 2% raise to get you through, let's just pick a department. I don't know, pick Department A, to get through most of the year. And if in October they realize they're not going to have salary money to pay their people, there's room for a budget amendment to come back here in front of us and show us what you've done to actually cut your budget. And if you've done everything you can and can't cut the budget, there's an amendment available. But we've asked for years to turn this around. And although I agree, this is the leanest budget we've seen, it still takes money out of the general fund if we didn't bond for it. What Commissioner Drolet was talking about, and I just want to point this out and make it a little more clear, is that in 2014, there was a presentation given for a big capital projects bond and a major 5-year plan to kind of knock capital projects off of our map. $91 million for the next 5 years from 2014 was going to take us down to a limit. Now, I understand it's not exact science, right? However, it showed that at the end of 2018, we were going to start taking maybe only $4 million a year for capital projects because we were going to knock all of these out. Now, granted, it didn't go the way it should. But in those 5 years, we spent $137 million on capital projects, not 91. So here we are again. Well, this year we want to talk about a bond for $12 million. But then that doesn't even really address the next couple of years, which are going to be even worse. Why is it? I mean, we're into, in the next 5 years, at least by projections alone, and based on what we've spent over from 14, about $200 million proposed or spent in capital projects. So we can give everybody another year to dial it in and hope that next year comes in better. But even when it comes in better, it doesn't come in the direction that we've been asking for a long time. So a 2% increase is not a cut. It's an actual 2% increase. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with taking your department and saying, live within this 2% increase. And if for some reason you are that department that 99% of your budget goes to salary, and that a couple of the non-union employees got bigger raises or something happened, come back to us. When you come back to us, we don't say no to something that's needed. So we're not going to be laying people off and doing anything with the 2% increase. I just want to point out that this is and Steve, I don't even believe you guys were here in 2000 when we did this the capital project budget. Were you, or was it Pete Provenzano still? Steve, I'm not really sure. I can't remember last year.
Pete was the director.
Right.
Pete was the director. I was the deputy at the time.
Okay. So I'm just saying, we know that the estimates are only estimates, and unfortunately, our capital project estimating has been not like our budget estimating has been. I like our budget estimating. We come back with extra money at the end. But capital projects has gone completely the other way, and somehow or another, we can't keep bonding. Pretty soon, we're going to be out of bonding ability. So my point to this whole thing is I think we have to do something, and I think a moderate plan, which is very strange to say coming out of that corner, but a moderate plan to only slightly raise departmental revenue is where we should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to take a different approach, but before I get started, other than Commissioner, what's your name over there again? Sauger, and myself, we've seen these cyclical times. We've seen them back in the 60s. We saw them in the 70s. Everybody was afraid to say depression, so we use the word now recession. They don't want to bring the word up depression again. I'm an eternal optimist. And I'm hoping that things will continue as good as they have been, if not better. But I'm also a gambler. And if I was to gamble, I don't think it can continue indefinitely. There has to be a deflation of the balloon that's been inflated for the last, 8, 9 years. My point is this. First question I have is for you, Steve. Right now, what do we have in our fund balance, may I ask?
Approximately 58. About 58 million.
Okay. What is a safe balance? When I say not a safe balance, what is the balance that bonding companies look at that give us a good rating as far as borrowing? What amount do we need to have? Ballpark.
It depends on what rating agency is, but typically between 15 and 20. Some prefer 30. I would tell you the
I've never
best
heard 30.
The best practice will say that you have 15 to 20. I would always say we need a little more than that.
Okay, so, and again, I'm going back to my days on the count. The 15 to 20, I'll take that. 30 I've never heard of, but 15 to 20 I go. So we go to 15 to 20. So we dip into our general fund, and it drops to 15. And right now we're paying X number of money for interest for bonding. Do we have any major bonding coming up within the next 5 years that you can think of?
Yeah, there's 12.5 million that we talked about in our work group last week, and there's about 4 or 5 projects. I think there's 7 projects on that list, actually.
$12.5 million will encompass all those projects.
12.5 million would encompass.
Okay, $12.5 million.
There's about 7 projects.
Okay. This 58 million that we're sitting on, we're going to draw down on that as time goes on for different projects. So when we get down to the bottom line, even this $12.5 million that we're going, what I'm looking at is this. We might hurt ourselves by drawing into the general fund, no question about it, but the idea is, the reason we don't want to is because if we have to bond out, we're going to get clobbered with the interest rates, number one. We've got to make sure that we don't go into some type of situation that Detroit went into. So using, and again, I'm going to use Leon Drolet's project proposal here for the 2%. It satisfies what we're trying to do today. It kind of eases off on the gas pedal, as you mentioned, using yours, that has been processed for the last 4 years, 5 years. And I think if things continue in their trend that they are, that eventually we come back to a budget next year. If things continue the way they are, then we move on that accordingly. But for the years being, I'm not trying to look ahead 10 years from now. And I certainly don't want to be short-sighted and say, let's look ahead 1 year from now. But I think using the projection that Leon has brought up, and I think Mr. Majek's projection is great, but I don't think there's enough room in this place here for all the people that were going to show up. All right, I don't think it's going to work. But using that 2%, I think would satisfy just about everybody. And going back to Chair Smith's suggestion, we talked about this. We've all talked about this. Here's your money. Here's what you're using in your budget. You want to do something else in your budget? Find it in your budget. It's not that complicated. And if you want to give raises out, find it for something else in your budget that you can do it with. Peace. Thank you.
Thank you. And since Commissioner Leonetti had just asked one quick question, I'm going to consider him on the first round. Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple points. When you look at Commissioner Drolet's proposed budget, we can say 2% across the board or the same as 2020 recommended. Let's take a look at some actual numbers. That always makes sense to me. Let's take a look at 2 departments here, Public Works and Register of Deeds. Now, Public Works is a department that I'm very fond of. I live on a lake, and I like the stuff that Candace Miller is doing there. She's also very, very fiscally not responsible, but fiscally adept at getting things done and getting grants. Commissioner Romano, we know she gets a lot of grants there. Now, take a look at her 2019 amended budget. She received $7,675,919 for her department. The executive proposed to up it almost $300,000 to $7,956,900. Commissioner Drolet's proposal still ups it. Instead of it being $7,956,000, it's actually $7,829,000. So the difference between what she got in 2019 and what she's going to get in Commissioner Drolet's proposed budget is still almost $150,000 increase. So I can assure you that Commissioner Miller is going to be able to take that $150,000 because I've seen her work. We've all seen her work. And she's going to be able to put that to some good use. And she might even come back with a savings. Now let's take a look at another department that I like, Register of Deeds. In 2019, that department got $2,254,000. The executive is offering to give him almost $110,000 more this year, $2,364,000. Commissioner Jolette's proposal actually gives them the difference between $2,254,000, which was 2019. His 2% increase still gives them $2,299,436. Maybe about $60,000 less than what the executive gave. The point is, every department's going to lose maybe 60 here, 30 here, 70 here. I mean, the Board of Commissioners is losing, well, we're staying the same. Yeah, we're not losing, we're actually gaining. But, right, they're not losing, but what I'm saying is the difference between what they got in 2019 now is an increase, but compared to what the executive was recommending, it's still a slight decrease that saves us $1,758,000 that we can put back into the reserves. And as far as the bond, let me say this. We've been talking about this bond for $12 million for capital improvements. I think that's an excellent suggestion by the executive. And I'm going to run some numbers here. I think, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong at any point. To have this bond, it's going to cost us about $950,000 a year in interest. However, in 2022, we have one bond that is existing right now that's going to drop, and that's going to free up $2.1 million back into our reserves or into our fund. Yeah, sure.
Back up one little bit.
You want, okay, so if we approve this bond for $12.5 million, we're going to have to add about $1 million a year in interest payments. But in 2022, we have an existing bond that drops off that's going to free up $2.1 million. So we're actually going to be ahead $1.1 million with the bond. Now, jump forward 3 more years to 2025, and we have another bond dropping off at $1.5 million. So bonding for these capital improvements makes absolute sense, given that in the next 5 years, we're going to have some freed up bonds and some more freed up revenue, or at least freed up payments from having to pay on those bonds. So I support the bond 100%. I think that the proposal by Commissioner Jolette, and this is from a guy who wants to cut everything, right? Okay? This is a proposal that tries to balance everything. We're trying to take care of capital improvements, and we're also trying to say, as I think he used it very wisely, let's just slow down on the gas pedal a little bit. We're not going to hurt anybody too bad. We're going to slow down. As Chairman Smith said, we can always amend things as the year goes on. And finally, as Commissioner Myjak said, who was here in the Great Recession, what are we going to do? And Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, I think your predictions say 21, 22, we're going to have tough years. Right?
Magic Swanee.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, assuming that our revenue projections are anywhere close to, accurate. I mean, we're showing, significant reductions in interest rates, real estate transfer tax, property taxes. We've backed down to 2% in 2021 and 1% in 2022. And so, as you know, because of Headley and Prop A, things never come back because you never get back to where you were.
Correct.
So
I think just as a point, we all know the story about the grasshopper and the ant, right? Do I have to tell it? But I will if anybody needs to hear it. I mean, there's the grasshopper and the ant during the summertime. The ant takes its time, kind of takes a little bit of its food, stores it down in its nest, makes sure it's prepared for the fall that's coming up. The grasshopper keeps jumping around and enjoying summer, and when winter comes, the grasshopper's stuck with nothing, and the ant has a little bit of something. And I think while times are good right now, it's the best time to try to do a little bit of savings someplace. I think that's something that we have to look at. If we don't necessarily agree with this proposal by Drolette, if you think that's too much, then go to 3%. If you think MyJax is better, and go to 1%. But something should be done now while the times are right. I think approving the bond is a good thing. That makes fiscal sense. But that's my position on these things. Thank you.
Thank you. First round, Commissioner Ha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm still trying to comprehend the grasshopper and the ant story, but that's okay. Recognizing regardless of, looking at Leon's proposal, the sheriff's department is 90,900,000, and in Rob's it's 86. But in either case, that's the vast majority of the budget, and I thought I heard Steve said that's to fill approved positions moving from 2019 to 2020 that are currently vacant. There's a lot of that expenses paying for new sheriffs. Number two, and I appreciate Rob's proposal, trying to get a proposed savings of $7 million out of 1 year's budget. We all want to do things like that. We all want to do things like that at home too. But is it feasible and conceivable, and what harm does that hit each one of the departments? Even Leon coming up with a 2% increase, which I commend Leon for being Leon and doing that. The next question I'm going to ask you, if we approve this, are you voting for it? That'll be my next question. You don't have to tell me now. You can tell me later. Yeah. We're going to put your proposal up and you vote no. We're going to be throwing stuff over there. Just heads up. Yeah. I got to commend him and Crystal and Rob in coming up with these proposals. I don't know what the next step is, but as Commissioner Romano said, he's an optimist. I'm charter president of the Optimist Club, but I believe that making a plan and working a plan is the way we get things done. So at the end of this dialogue, I hope somebody explains what's next steps. Thank you.
Thank you. First round, Commissioner Duge. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Whatever time you deem appropriate.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So I don't like to, do things off the cuff, so I haven't had a chance to analyze any of the numbers being talked about or anything like that, so I don't want to commit to anything. But kind of going back to what Commissioner Kleinfeld was indicating earlier, to do, either one of the proposals being talked about here without knowing what the impact is, depending on the department, it would most likely, in my opinion, involve personnel of some kind. So if you look at Public Works, we use that as an example. So as I calculated it, we would have to reduce their budget by $127,000-ish. Is that?
Reduce the proposed budget.
I think under your proposal, Commissioner. Yes. About $127,000.
Point of information, reduce the proposed budget.
Yeah, reduce the proposed budget by 127. Their entire operating budget's only 85,000. So it would involve personnel because you can't really touch internal services because those are all set in funding other things like liability insurance and property insurance and phones and indirect costs and all that sort of thing. So just food for thought without seeing the impact or calculating it or being able to comment. That's just something to think about.
If I may to understand what you said, Steve. So using Public Works, the proposed budget is $7,956,900. If we adopt Leon's proposal, it would actually be $7,829,437. So you're right, it's a difference of about $130,000.
Yes.
You're telling us that their operating expense is only about 85?
Yeah, if you look at supplies and services, conferences, repairs and maintenance, vehicles, in Public Works, that's only about 85,000.
Okay.
You could eliminate the entire budget for operating, and you'd still not get to that target.
Okay. So ultimately, the department head would have to lay off personnel?
Well,
I don't know.
You don't know, right.
It would be a combination of.
Or come back.
Or come back.
Or come back.
Yeah, if
Okay,
I don't know what.
I want to get back to the list. I thought you were going to ask for clarification, but I think it's not, I want to allow Commissioner Gillette to go ahead on the second round. Oh, did you? I'm sorry, Commissioner Duge on the first round. I apologize.
Madam Chair, I pulled off, I was questioning the $2 million for the Public Works budget, and that was out of the MIT, or mid.
yeah, mid.
So that's explained. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Chair. And a couple things I think need to be clarified. I am not making this proposal because of there's going to be an economic downturn around the corner and that we need to put a lot of money aside for that. That may well happen. Steve may be right. This proposal doesn't put a lot of money into the reserve fund. This has us just not lose ground. The budget proposed by the executive is about 1.7 million under expected revenues. So I just wanted to position us so we don't lose ground. We're not going to be putting a ton of money aside. We're unfortunately not going to be the ant that we would be under potentially Commissioner Myjack's proposal, where we would be putting money aside for the bad times. We're just not going to lose ground in good times. The 1.7 million difference between the exec proposal is just basically what we expect in revenues. So revenues balance with the expenditures. That's all it really is. And to Steve's point, and to also Commissioner Kleinfeld's, yes, giving it a 2% increase will have ramifications. It isn't the 4% increase that some departments may prefer to have. I'm not saying that nobody's going to have to make adjustments. There will be vacancies probably that will not be able to be filled. There will be adjustments that will be made. There will be tough decisions by department heads that will be made, even by giving them an increase. But to Commissioner Kleinfeld's point, saying we don't want to force those decisions to be made now doesn't mean they won't be made, because we'll be eating into the reserve fund by another $1.7 million for next year if we don't do this, making the decision bigger. With every year, that problem just becomes bigger, and we're creating a potential
Commissioner Myjack, could you let him speak?
a far bigger problem for what we're going to do with personnel, how we're going to pay for things in the future. Yes, we can put it off. We can say, let's just eat in the rainy day fund. We don't have to worry about what the Public Works Commissioner is going to have to do to figure out how to make her adjustment. We don't have to worry about anybody making adjustments. We'll just give the money out of the rainy day fund in this good time and worry about it next year. Heck, maybe we won't even be here in 2-3 years when those commissioners are down to a 14% fund balance, the way it's looking, and the economy takes a tank. So I don't want to wait to that point. I am willing to increase spending. I just don't think we should do it beyond revenues. I don't pretend that that's not going to create some challenges and difficult challenges for departments, for the executive, and for us. But I think we need to start addressing those challenges and say we will do no harm to our rainy day fund. We will do no harm to our future of our county. We at least will keep things even and not make things worse. I think that's good stewardship for our citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Myjack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like to feel that we are in control of our situation. We feel good about these numbers. We don't have thoughts of superstition, wishing, hopeful, recession, optimism, any of that stuff. I'm just going simply by these numbers. Bonding, that's an important number. Where our budget surplus is, that's an important number. But I'm telling you, that line item is everything there. Okay? With Leon's proposal, okay, if that were to pass, we're still having a deficit of $5 million in 2021 and a deficit of $9.4 million in 2022, according to these numbers. That's $14 million. That is a lot to deal with. If you don't do things now, you're going to have deeper cuts then. 10 years ago, we had to cut so much, thank God, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, I don't think we had to have any major layoffs. We cut so much then, we eliminated jobs through attrition. That's why I have been nervous the last 5 years. Anytime we're adding new positions, I'm thinking, can we afford this? That's my reason for this, and the reason for me putting up my proposal is to make the deficits for 2021 and 2022 be less than what if we passed Leon's, it would be less than that. If we passed my proposal, we would be in a little bit better shape, but if we don't do it, we're certainly going to have major layoffs, major cuts, and it will be more hurtful and harmful to departments and to our employees. So that was the reason for me coming up with that proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, a couple of things. The first is, Steve, when are you looking for a vote on that bonding?
That wouldn't be till mid next year,
Okay.
Q2, Q3. Most
Okay.
of the projects on that proposed list are in 21 and 22. There's a couple of them in 20, but be, mid to third quarter.
Okay. Okay, so the second thing I just wanted to clarify, because Crystal and I were talking about this, well, I was asking her about it, is these proposals only affect the general funds. So there are other funds, like Department of Roads, we put money out of the general fund into the Department of Roads. There are some funds like that I believe we didn't put in here, correct? We didn't look at all of those. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that, and I'm not even sure what they are. Were you going to say something relative to
Yeah,
that?
just a correction. The general fund doesn't contribute any money
We
to
don't
roads.
put any in roads?
Not in roads.
Okay,
There
but-
are other funds like the Friend of the Court Fund, Child Care Fund, Health Grants, Sheriff Grants, Prosecutor Grants, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so there are some in here.
Right.
Okay, I used the wrong one. I
Yep.
apologize.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to make sure you were clarified on
So
it.
there are some that we put money into from the general fund. I just wanted to put it on your radar that those aren't part of this. And then the last thing I want to say is I was stating my position for the rationale for my vote. But that does not mean that I judge anybody else for their vote or why they've come to the conclusion they've come to. And I did tell Commissioner Gillette I'm very appreciative of all the work that several commissioners put into going through the budget in a greater detail than I've seen in the past. And I just wanted to put on everybody's radar what my concerns are, but I want everybody to know I don't intend, I've made my statement, I don't intend to debate everybody because I respect and understand each and every one of your positions. With that, Commissioner Ha.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm glad we're not debating. Steve, quick question for you, just so that everybody's memory is on the same page. There was 5 or 6 of 5 that met with you, Mark Delden, and Mark Hackle, and we talked about the budget. One of the primary discussion items was the bonding. What else was your understanding coming out of that discussion, other than the bonding?
That was the proposal from the administration at the time.
Say that again.
That was the proposal from the administration at that meeting. Was to
Bonding plus.
reduce cash outlay for capital projects by issuing debt,
Right.
essentially.
And I thought Mark indicated, or Delden, one of the two of them, that other things like Martha Teaberry and those issues were covered by your original budget proposal. Oh, no,
Just want to chip in into what you're saying when you're finished there.
a chip?
I wanted to add to the recollection of that meeting, if I could.
Oh, well, you're the one that gave the synopsis of it, so I would hope so.
You want me to do it now, or do you want me to wait for you to finish?
No, wait till I'm done. Don't let him interrupt again.
Okay, he's the next speaker though, so I want to make sure, I got to let Chair Smith make that decision.
I'm actually the next speaker. Thank you.
Oh,
Madam
I'm
Chair.
sorry. Wait.
Two
I think-
Oh,
speakers.
first round, apologize.
So back to the understanding of coming out of there before Leon puts his chip in. What was your understanding?
That the proposal to amend the 20 budget was to basically reduce cash for capital projects and issue bonds in place of that.
And
That was the
accom-
administration's
I'm
proposal
sorry,
forward to the board.
that accomplished the request of not spending more than we're bringing in?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, and very briefly, Commissioner Gillette, because Commissioner Kraft hasn't had a first round yet, so just,
Yes.
you're
I'll
very.
just add that recollection is correct, but the other statement by the administration was that he stands by the 2020 budget as presented, and that any adjustments to that 2020 budget would be on the Board of Commissioners to undertake. So that was the two takeaways I came from that meeting. And just to mention that I do have a scheduled meeting with the executive Hackle, Mr. Delden, and Mr. Schmiegel next week on Tuesday to discuss this particular proposal.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to wait to bring up my amendments till we're done with this discussion, but my question is kind of for Steve. Steve, I understand that for many, many departments, the major cost is in personnel. It's not like they're all planning and economic development where they spend $250,000 on conferences and training a year. Having said that, Commissioner Kleinfeld, who is our chair of finance, showed some frustration in our study, class and comp study. I have incredible frustrations with that study because we weren't a part of that conversation as commissioners. At least I wasn't. And it sounds like our finance chair was not either. And I don't even think our board chair was either. But now the decisions that we have to make, our hands are being forced by the results of that study. And that's where a lot of this is coming from. So we may not be laying people off or firing people, but we're backed against the wall because of this study and the results that were found of this study. Now, my question to you is, the results of that study, were those mandatory? If we said, okay, employee X is at step 5, but based on their job, they should be at 7, did we automatically move employee X from 5 to 7?
I don't know. You'd have to talk to Mr. McKinnon, but so restate your question. So if somebody,
So if you're, based on the study
Yeah.
and what was classified for all the employees in the county.
Right.
Let's say employee X is at step 5 making $50,000. But based on this study and the job that they do, they should be making $65,000. In this upcoming budget, did all of those employees that should have seen a jump see a jump?
that I don't know. I don't know if they all saw the jump that the study indicated.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
That'd have to be an HR question.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Chair Smith.
Thank you. Harold, to your point, I just wanted to, I have this thing here. So you're right about, I think the resolution that we gave said kind of two things that almost built upon each other. One was don't spend more than we take in. And with the bonding, that accomplishes that by $38,900. But one of the other resolutions was to add 1% into the general fund. So it was almost we probably should have had one that said either or, right? Because we can even our spending out, but that doesn't mean we're going to add money to the general fund. So what I'm showing here, though, let's say without Leon or Commissioner Drolet or Commissioner Myjack's proposal, what was proposed with the bonding issue was that at the end of 20, we would have 38,000, to the good. At the end of 21, though, we would be down almost 7 million, and at the end of 22, we would be down over 11 million. So let's not be fooled by next year. And I know we're only looking at next year's budget, but as budgeters, we have to look a little farther out than that. And that's why I think the proposal to at least save $1.6 million or whatever that the 2% does, at least starts putting us closer to the right direction. And I'm going to throw out there again, we know that this will not affect everybody evenly. However, since we're not really involved in the process and we don't get a ton of information about it, it's probably as good a job as we could do to turn this thing around. And everybody in every department knows that they can come and talk to us and explain. And we can even put parameters in place at the beginning of the year on when you can come and talk to us and show us. A, have you filled vacant positions? B, have you done any type of cost savings in your department? And what? Show us, right? And then come to us, and if there's a problem like in the public works where you only have, a small amount of costs that don't have to do with the actual operation or the salary, then of course we would do something about that. But I think this is our way to at least start the process. So anyway, that's it. I just wanted to clarify that resolution.
Okay, thank
Thanks.
you. And before I call on Commissioner Leonetti, I want to let commissioners know that we do want to get to Commissioner Kraft's amendments too. So I don't want to go into 4 and 5 rounds for each commissioner. Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you. Just to make a point, and then I have a question for you, Steve. The point along with what Chairman Smith said, that was with the bond, if we approve the bond. If we don't approve the bond, in 2021 and 2022, combining those two numbers that are projected in lost revenue, in what we're going to be over in terms of budget, it's $12 million in 21 and $14.5 million in 22. That's $26 million. We have $58 million in our reserve. You're talking almost half our reserve eaten up in 2 years, less than 3 years from now. So you can see the importance of the bond. But even with the bond, it's still going to be about $18 million of our $58 million. So there's got to be some reason either to hold the line or to put a little bit back into there. Now, I do have a question, Steve. So let's just take a look at 2019, right? When we adopted 2019, we thought we'd be about $5 million in the hole, right?
When you adopted it, it was 8.8.
8, right. Okay. And then today, you gave us good news. We're maybe about $656,000 to the good, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is it possible that, and I guess the point is this, we've got money in the good. Does that mean department heads are making tough decisions and they're saying, whoa, maybe I don't need to spend this, and we're getting money back into the general fund? It looks like some cases it is. In other cases, it's just increased revenue that's made that difference.
That's true, and those 4 items that you've approved today have been already reflected in the 20 budget.
So
those revenue enhancements already been built in.
okay. But we're worried about revenue in 21 and 22. That
Correct.
we're worried about.
That's correct.
Okay. So again, kind of going along with what Commissioner Kleinfeld said, look, tough choices are going to have to be made. And as Commissioner Drollet said and Commissioner Majek said, they can either be done now while we're just kind of easing up on the accelerator, or they're going to have to be done when we smash into the wall. So I'd rather, pull back on the accelerator and maneuver the wall if we can a little bit. So these are things to think about. But I mean, if you're telling me in 3 years we're going to go through 28 million of the 58 million of our reserve, that's scary. And that's in supposedly just coming off of good times. What happens if the next recession carries on for 3 or 4 years? So just things to think about. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Gillette on the third round, any chip in?
A clarification on the resolution passed by our board. We want to do not expend more than we take in. We also wanted to add, as Chair Smith pointed out, to our fund balance. Under the executive, let's assume we do the bond. Let's assume we do the $12 million bond. Our fund balance at 19 is approximately 21.5% as of 2019. If we do the bond, but we spend the executive's budget as proposed, our fund balance drops from 21.5% to 21%. We lose money as a percentage in our fund balance of what we spend. If we do the bond and we do the 2% increase only, limit the increases to only 2%, our fund balance goes up from 21.5% to 21.7%. That's not a lot, but it's 21.5 to 21.7. Now, I know Commissioner Myjak's proposal would do a lot better than that with our fund balance. So I understand his motivation is to try to build it to a better point. I don't mean to apologize for only going up 0.3% of our fund balance, but I think we should at least not lose ground. If we don't, even if we do the bond, but if we don't cap increases to 2% only, we lose ground. So let's just hold steady at least. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I don't have any other speakers on this. Commissioner Kraft, would you like to speak to yours?
Certainly. Thank you, Madam Chair. Oddly enough, I'm the only one on this board proposing any cuts, so here we go. And apparently they're easy targets. We'll see how easy they are. So in front of you is an email that I sent out on Monday with some of my proposals, some of my ideas. I just basically went through the appropriations page because I also worked with Commissioner Drollet on some of the overarching bigger cuts, but these are a little more direct. A couple of my ideas. You want me to just lay them all out first or go one at a time, Madam Chair?
It doesn't matter to me. I think
Okay.
everybody's got a copy.
Perfect. I'll just lay them all out. For starters, I would cut entirely the 8 Mile Boulevard Association, which is a total of $5,000. I would also cut entirely our $45,000 that we give to the Detroit Regional Chamber, because it's also come to my attention that not only do we pay them $45,000, but we also participate in leadership activities that also cost us money. And then from there, I would reduce the amount that we give the Detroit Regional Partnership. The proposal was $70,000. I would propose cutting that in half to $35,000. Next, I would reduce one Macomb. The proposal was $30,000. In the past, we have not given them more than $21,000. I would propose cutting that down to $15,000. Last for a reduction, the St. Clair Sanilac Conservation District. The proposal is $25,000. They used $5,000 in 2017. They did not use any in 2018. We proposed to do $25,000. I would propose giving them $10,000. And last but not least, I'm getting more information on this at the end of the week from Andy McKinnon. But in the appropriations other section, there is a professional development initiative that costs $150,000. Apparently that is for leadership and diversity training. So, like I said, I'm getting more information from Andy on that at the end of the week, but $150,000 seems like a lot. I would even, instead of cutting that entirely, cut it down to $75,000, but those are some of my thoughts, not yours. I'll turn it over to Chair Kleinfeld.
Okay, and the only thing I would say with regard to that is probably because yours are more specific, we'll break them down into separate votes. So that commissioners can decide to go one way and then the other. And as well as my desire to move MAC money into our budget would also be a separate vote. And I don't have anybody, does anybody want to speak to his? Okay, so Commissioner Duje.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Although I can appreciate some of this, cut entirely the 8 Mile Boulevard Association. When I was on the TIFA board in the city of Warren, this association actually did a lot of good all through the 8 Mile corridor, both from St. Clair, from the Lake St. Clair, all the way to Van Dyke and up Van Dyke into Centerline. I'd oppose for $5,000. I think it's money well spent in that area. Also, the Detroit Regional Chamber, although we've had discussions on the Regional Chamber previously, I'd say cut it in half as opposed to cutting it completely off. That I could maybe support. One Macomb, on the other hand, cutting it to $15,000, I'd want to go through that one with county executive. There are things that came up with one Macomb that will be discussed at a later time, not today. And I can probably support the St. Clair Sanilac Conservation District. But please, to all the other members on the board, 8 Mile serves as a border for my district, Commissioner Sauger, Commissioner Kleinfeld's district, and in conjunction with Wayne County, it is a step into Macomb County, and 8 Mile, they do a nice job. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Smith.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to point out, and I'm sure that Commissioner Kraft will echo this, is that these proposed cuts are not to say that any of these groups don't do good work. It's just what, because listen, at any point in this county, I mean, when we're going to have to cut or when the cuts come, it's not that we're cutting people that do bad work or positions that do bad work or programs that don't work. Sometimes they're just, and I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with any of it. I just want to point out that to any of you out there, this is not being categorized as, these people aren't any good. We should cut this. They're just ideas that one commissioner or maybe more find that this might be an easy way to, to help save some money. Steve, can I just back up 1 second? I thought there was a talk, though, originally that this first bond might be followed possibly by a second one, but because some of the projects were down the line a little, that maybe there might be a first bond and a second bond type of thought in your guys' mind at all, or is that just kind of?
You could possibly issue 2 series totaling 12 million.
Oh, okay.
Depending on the timing.
I didn't know if it was going to try to be more than 12 because there's still quite a bit
not
of.
really, because then once we get out 3 or 4 years, what we've built in is a kind of a static $10 million number going forward, because
Okay.
projects out 3 or 4 years
Right.
are not an all-inclusive list, as we know from past history.
Okay, thanks. I know that was the last round. I had to ask you that. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Romano?
Just an afterthought, if I may, Commissioner Douget, this 8 Mile Boulevard Association, the good that they do, maybe perhaps by the next time we discuss this, you could have some information on all the good that 8 Mile Road and all that stuff does. I would certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sauger?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I was going to say when I got a chance to talk. And, you want to take $5,000 out of the district I represent, Commissioner District, take something out of your district. Let's go around the table here, and then you know what it's like to get hurt. So that's a minor amount. Don't even discuss it. We're going to find that out, and we'll let you know. And I'll bet when we give you the answer, you'll take that off the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kraft?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to wrap up, I would love to have an extra $5,000 for something in my district. I'm sure all the other commissioners would too, but you guys are looking to take away my court, so that's a little more than $5,000. But having said that, I just wanted to mention that the total reduction would be a total of $265,000 if all of these were approved, and that's 5 employees at $50,000 a year that we may not have to lay off, fire, whatever it may be. So thank you, commissioners, for taking these into consideration. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I would ask that Crystal get these to Steve, hopefully by tomorrow, so that they would have an opportunity to respond. All three, and as well as mine on Mac, and any others that come in. I want to get them to, I do want to hear the responses, so if you'll do that. And with that, we have a motion to receive and file. Please vote. That motion passes 13-0. I had to do a double take there. Yes. Correspondence, follow-up budget information from the Finance Department, and.
That's what we already talked about with the forecast.
Okay, can I get a motion to receive and file? Okay, moved by Romano, supported by Douget. So you want discussion on those? Okay, so that's not something that we need to speak to. Okay, please vote. That motion passes 13-0. New business, does anyone have any new business? Commissioner Ha.
Quickly, there was today, an article in the Detroit News on this RTA situation. Somebody needs to explain to us, even though the county exec has not indicated he's not supporting it, that there's a time later and date that Macomb could join, but the county commissioners, if I read it correct, and I had it on my phone, was talking to him and deleted it, the county commissioners would have to vote to be included in the millage vote for RTA. Now, I may have this all wrong or I've read it wrong, but heads up, because they could, once this pass in Lansing, this could fall right in our lap to have a vote on, to put it on the ballot to allow the citizens to either approve or disapprove the millage. So, but somebody, maybe corporate counsel or somebody needs to explain this to us, or somebody from Lansing. Don't look at him. But it's in today's Detroit News, if you read it. The new law puts it back on to the county commissioners to authorize it to go on the ballot. Just,
Took it out of the authority.
huh?
They took it out of the authority.
Something like that.
It's like the DIA authority.
Did you read the article? Are you going to clarify?
I'm
Another
gonna,
chip?
no, I'm gonna concur in your desire to have that clarification, because I did read the article, and I'm not 100% sure how the bill works out. I think that hopefully our lobbyist is an understanding of that bill, so perhaps we could ask the lobbyist to come before us and explain what it is, because I'm not exactly sure. You may have even read it, you may have more details than I have in reading it, I wasn't sure. So maybe the lobbyist can explain what the bill is and where it goes and what our role is.
Okay, and yeah, and the Macomb Daily says this legislative tool is important because it requires involvement of our county boards of commission. So, yes. Okay, Chair Smith.
Thanks. And we have, Gary Owen is been given a list of meetings to see if he can come in and talk to us about some other things, and we'll see if that's going to be one of them. So it will be shortly. So we'll get him in. And I've been talking with Oakland County commissioners a little bit about this, and I am not aware of that part of the law, but we will ask our corporation counsel to look into it and give us some kind of idea of what they think this law says as far as we're concerned. Yeah, I'm going to tell you that next. All right? So let me get to our proposed schedule. Tomorrow, full board, we have something with roads that we have to do and any other further budget discussion. Plus, I want to pass out the proposed resolution for Martha Teaberry for the .1 mil, the one time. I would like to then, our next meeting, our next scheduled meeting is December 2nd. I would like to vote on the Martha Teaberry proposed mill on that day. And then, whether that passes or not will give us a better idea on the 4th, which is when I would like to shoot for the budget vote. That's Wednesday. If something goes awry on Wednesday, there's a meeting on Thursday anyway. We can bump it one more day and still be within our time frame. But the plan right now is meeting tomorrow, discuss some of the, I'm going to pass out the Martha Teaberry resolution. We'll have a week and a half or two to look at it. It is the same basic one that was passed out to us quite a while ago. And it just explains the mill and that it's a one-time and how much it is generally towards for each household. No, this one's by law. This one is a law that has to be voted on yearly. So I will say that. It has nothing to do with whether they decide they want another one.
Okay, so we need to schedule a budget meeting then, correct? For all these amendments, or do you want to do them the day?
We can do that on the 2nd also. We can
Okay.
talk about, so the Martha
Okay.
Teaberry, and on the 2nd, we will be discussing any of the budget amendments, and that will give us the 4th, and if we're not ready by then, we have the 5th. Those are planned meetings. So my plan is to vote on the budget on the 4th. Discuss all the budget amendments to death again on the 2nd. And there is another week that Crystal and everybody will be around if there's any desire to come in and talk about these, any amendments, the numbers that they propose, anything that comes back from the executive's office prior to that. Commissioner Brown, yes.
What about, if we're having these budget discussions on the 2nd, what about moving the meeting time up a little bit because we get into these debates and about the budget, sometimes they go long. I mean,
Well, I think I will just say that a lot of our debate kind of happened on today, unless we get anything really new. Our debate is between 1% and 2%, and the cuts right now, unless something comes in by Friday.
All right,
We've had a
okay,
fair
okay.
discussion on it, and I don't
All right.
really know how much more we're gonna go into that.
I'm storing up all my stuff for a long-winded meeting.
All right. Well, you'll be the only one.
Commissioner Duche.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to let you know, I will not be here on the 2nd or the 4th. I will be temporarily indisposed. Thank you.
All right, well, we'll look into that. I'll talk with you about that, all right? Those are scheduled meetings, so I mean, I understand that you can't make it, but but we have a time frame that we have to work within on the possible, whether we pass the budget or if we amend it, then there's a time frame to possibly veto it, and then that time frame still, we need time to schedule another meeting for what we would do. So, anybody have any questions? Commissioner?
Can
Oh, yeah.
I chair my meeting?
Yeah, go ahead, sure. I know you like chairing mine too sometimes, but that's okay.
No, I want
Okay.
to sit over there. Commissioner Romano.
Were you asking me a question, Commissioner Romano, or no?
No, I
Oh,
was
this
not.
is new business? I'm sorry.
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Madam Chair. You two all through?
No.
You two all through? Okay, if you're all through, I'll take the floor.
You can talk.
I just want to give a shout out to Clerk Miller. He attended Sterling Heights City Council meeting last night and gave some of the information out that he's been doing in his particular department with the turmoil, before the turmoil and after the turmoil, and now it's running like a nice greased machine, and he received a lot of accolades. At the same time, he presented to Sterling Heights some deeds that were back to, I think the last one he had, the oldest one he had was around 1825, that showed who actually owned the property that they were standing in at the city council meeting, and he brought those deeds all the way up to, I think, about 1895, and it was a large map of what was who and who owned what in Sterling Heights. It was very informative. Thank goodness my wife likes to watch those, because so did I. And it was nice to see, and Fred did really, as always, he does a great job. He's starting out with that new mobile thing. Well, it's not new. He's done that before. He's been in Sterling Heights with his mobile truck, I guess they call it, and he's gone to the senior meetings with it, and I think he's open to every one of the commissioners to do that in their district if they so desire. But I just wanted to give a shout out. He's doing a great job, and I just want to keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Myjack.
Yeah, I cannot attend tomorrow's meeting. I'm out of town on a conference, so thank you.
Okay, and I don't see any other commissioners. I did want to note that I believe it's people interested in MSU Extension that showed up to hear this debate today. I appreciate you guys coming. Just wanted to acknowledge that. Public participation, does anyone wish to be heard? Anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Motion to adjourn by Duge, supported by Gillette. Please vote.
It's not a surprise that you watched that city.
I'm trying. And we're adjourned.